Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Congregation Agudat Achim's in-person and live stream Shabbat morning service. I'm Rabbi Rafi Spitzer. I'm very excited to be joining with you today for this Carrot Festival Shabbat, the Shabbat on which we acknowledge and honor our lay leadership, our volunteers, and all of those who work to make sure that our Carrot Festival is a great success. This week is Shabbat Parashat Toldot, and it is also the Shabbat on which we use our new Sidur Lev Shalem Sidurim, which is very, very exciting. This morning, our Psukei de Zimra service will be a musical service, and I will be calling pages in both Sidur Lev Shalem and Sidur Sim Shalom. You can begin with me with Ma Tovu on page 101 in Sidur Lev Shalem and page 2 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Ma Tovu Ohalacha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. Ma Tovu Ohalacha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. Ma Tovu Ohalacha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. We rise for the morning blessings for Chodesh Shachar, page 103 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 10 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher nasa v'vin alav kimin yom u'min laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abi sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokaretz alamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otei Yisrael betifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein liyayif koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavi shem einaynu mami afapai. Yiratzon b'menach Adonai Eloheinu. U'neinu hayom v'chol yom l'cheinu chesed rachamim b'einech u'b'nei koreinu v'tikmoinu chasim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai v'melech chasim tovim l'amo Yisrael. We turn now to page 120 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 52 in Sidur Sim Shalom for Eilecha. Eilecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai etchanan. Eilecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai etchanan. Shema Adonai v'choneini. Adonai ozer li. Shema Adonai v'choneini. Adonai ozer li. Shema Adonai v'choneini. Adonai We continue on page 122 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 54 in Sidur Sim Shalom. We rise. Baruch Shemar Vayalam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Osev Reshit, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Omer Yosef. Baruch Chailad V'Kayam LaNetzach, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Bodeh Umatzil, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo, Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Haolam, Hayala Baruch Hamanam Olal B'Viyamo Mishvachim Bar B'Shan Chasida V'Avada B'Shvei Avinu Yachid Chai Olamim Melech Mishvachim Fordi Ad Shemo Hagadol, Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Me'olal V'Tishvachot. You may be seated as we continue on page 127 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 62 in Sidur Sim Shalom, from Psalm 119 in the middle of the page. Psalm 19, not 119, Psalm 19. Torah Adonai Temima, Torah Adonai Temima, Torah Adonai Temima, Meshiva Nafesh. Torah Adonai Temima, Torah Adonai Temima, Torah Adonai Temima, Meshiva Nafesh. Edut Adonai Ne'emana Makimat Peti. Edut Adonai Ne'emana Makimat Peti. We turn to page 130 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 66 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Yoshev b'seiter elyon b'tzel Shaddai hitlonan omar ladonai machzi umtzudati Elohai evtach bo ki hu yatzilcha mipach yakush midever havod bevrato yasech lach ותחת כנפיו תחסד, שנאה וסוחרה אמיתו לא תירא, מפחד לילה מחץ יעוף יומם, מדבר באופל יהלוך, מכתב ישוט צהריים, מפה מצדך אלף ורבבה מימינך אליך לא ייגש, רק בעיניך תביט, בשלמת רשעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני מחזי עליון. שמת מעונך לא תאונה לך רע, ונגע לא יקרב באוהלך, כי מלאכיו יצווה לך לשמורך בכל דרכיך. על כפיים יישאונך, פן תיגוף באבן רגליך, על שכב אפה תן תדרוך, תרמוס כפיר ותנין, כי אביך שק ואפלתהו, אסגבהו כי ידע שמי, יקראני ועיניהו, עמו אנוכי בצרה, אכבדהו ואכבדהו, אורך ימים אשביעהו ויראהו בישועתי, אורך ימים אשביעהו ויראהו בישועתי, אורך ימים אשביעהו ויראהו בישועתי, Orech Yamim Asbiyehu Ve'arehu Bishuati. Same tune, we rise, page 132 or page 72. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam hasov. Hodu le'Elohei ha'Elohim, ki le'olam hasov. Hodu l'Adonai ha'Adonim, ki le'olam hasov. Le'oseh niflaot gedolo levado, ki le'olam chaso, le'oseh hashamayim bituna, ki le'olam chaso, le'roka haaretz al hamayim, ki le'olam chaso, le'oseh orim gedolim, ki le'olam chaso, et hashemesh le'memshelet bayom, ki le'olam chaso. Last four lines. Shebishifleinu zachar lanu, ki le'olam chaso. V'kekeinu mitzareinu, ki le'olam chaso. Noten lachem lechol basar, ki le'olam chaso. Hodu le'el hashamayim, ki le'olam chaso. You may be seated as we continue on page 136 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 80 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Ashrei Yoshavitecha, Od Yalu Chasela, Ashrei Am Shekachalo, Ashrei Am Shadonai Eloav. Tilat Adonai daber pi, vivorech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam va'ed, v'anach nevarechah me'atav olam. Hallelujah. We continue on page 139 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 86 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Hallelujah. 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 Adonai min hashamayim. Hallelujah b'meromim. Hallelujah chol malachav. Hallelujah kol tziva'av. Hallelujah shemesh v'yareach. Hallelujah kol kochvei or. Hallelujah shemei hashamayim ve'amayim asher me'al hashamayim. Hallelujah et shem Adonai ki utziva v'nirau v'yamidem la'ad le'olam chok natan v'lo yavor. Hallelujah. 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 Adonai min haaretz taninim v'chol tehomot. Eshuv arad shelek v'kitor ruach sara osa devaro. He'arim v'chol gevaot, Eitz pri v'chol arazim, Hachaya v'chol behema, Remes v'tzipor kanaf, Malchei eretz v'chol leumim, Sarim v'chol shofetei aretz, Bachurim v'gam betulot, Zekenim, Im ne'arim. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, Ki niskav shemo levado, Hodo al eretz, Mishamayim vayarem keren le'amo, Te'ila lechol chasidav, Livnei Yisrael ham kirovo. Hallelujah. 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 We turn to page 141 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 88 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, el bekodsho, hallelujah, birki auzo, hallelujah, vigvuratav, hallelujah, kerov gudo, hallelujah, beteka shofar, hallelujah, benevel vechinor, hallelujah, betov umachol, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav, hallelujah, betziltalei shama, hallelujah, betziltalei tshuva, hallelujah, betziltalei shama, hallelujah, betziltalei tshuva, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol hanshama tehallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. We rise, page 143 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 90, 2 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Ozi ezimratya vahili lishua. Ozi ezimratya vahili lishua. Ozi bezimratya vayili lishua. Ozi bezimratya vayili lishua. Ozi bezimratya vayili lishua. Ozi bezimratya vayili lishua. Yeshua. Ozi Zimrat Yah Vaili Lishua. Yainainam 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 Adonai Himloch Leolam Vaed. Adonai Himloch Leolam Vaed. Vatikach Miriam Haniviyah Achod Aharon Et Hatov Biyada Vatetzanach Anashim Achareha Betupim Uvimcholot Vatan Lahem Miriam Shiru Ladonai Ki Gaoga Sus V'rochvo Ramavayam Ki Ladonai Mulchama Shebogaim V'alu Moshim Artzion Nishpotet Harisa V'aytal Adonai Hamlucha V'haya Adonai Lamelech Al Kol Haaretz V'yom Ahu Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. You may be seated as we continue on page 145 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 334, page 334 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Yedidai dai dai ay 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 dai dai ay ay dai ay dai ay dai ay dai dai ay dai dai ay ay dai ay dai 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 ay 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 dai dai ay ay dai ay dai ay dai ay 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 dai dai ay ay dai dai. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Nishmat kol chai tivarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Yedidai dai dai yai yai dai yai dai dai yai yai dai yai 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 dai yai dai dai yai dai dai yai yai dai 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 yai yai dai 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 yai dai dai yai dai yai dai yai dai dai yai dai dai yai dai dai dai. Yichol pelecha yodeh. V'chol hashon lecha tishava. V'chol berech lecha tichra. V'chol koma lefanecha tishtachaveh. V'chol vavot yiraucha. V'chol kereb uchlayot yizamru lishmecha. Kadavar shekatuv. Kol atzmotai tomarna Adonai michamocha. Matziu ani mechazak mimenu. V'ani v'evyon migozelo. Mid melach umi yishvelach. Umi yaroch lach. Ha'el ha'gadol ha'gibor v'anoram. El elyon konei shamayim v'aretz. Ne'alelcha, nishabecha, u'nefaercha, u'nevarech et shem kodshecha, kamur leDavid. Barchi nafshi et Adonai v'chol keravai et shem kodsho ha'el betatzumot uzecha hagadol bichvod shemecha ha'gibor lanetzach v'hanora v'norotecha ha'melech ha'yoshev ha'kisei ram v'nisa. The formal chanting of Shacharit begins in the middle of page 147 in Sidur Lev Shalem 147, or at the bottom of page 336 in Sidur Sim Shalom with the words Shochenad. Shochenad Maharom V'kadosh Shemo V'chatu Prananu Tzadikim Badonai La Yisharim Nava Tehila V'fi Yisharim Titalal Uv'direi Tzadikim Titbarach Uv'ilshon Chasidim Titromam Uvekerev Kedoshim Titkadash Umakalot Rivavot Amcha Beit Yisrael Berina Yitbar Shimcha Malkeinu B'chol Dor Vador Shekein Chavad Kol Yitzrim Lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Lehodot Lehalel Leshabeach Lefaer Neromim Lehader Levarech Lalei Ulakales Al kol divrei shirov detish bechot David ben Yishai Avdecha Meshichecha. We rise for Yishtabach, page 148 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 338 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Yishtabach Shimcha Lad Malkeinu. Brachot v'horaot me'atav yad olam Baruch atah Adonai El melech gadol batishbachot El haodaot Adonai niflaot Habochei b'shirei zimra Melech elchei haolamim Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Ve'alma divra kirutei V'yamlich malchutei V'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayedecho Beit Yisrael V'agalav izman kariv Imru Amen Yesh Me'Rabba Mevarach Ve'alam Olamei Alamaya Yitbarach Ve'yishtabach V'yitbar V'yitramam V'naseh V'yitadar V'yitalev V'yitala Shmei Dekudesha Berichu Le'ila Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tush B'chata V'nechemata Damiran Ve'alma V'meru Amen. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. You may be seated as we continue in Sidur Lev Shalem on page 150 and in Sidur Sim Shalom on page 340. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom, uvorei et hakol, hakol yodu, chave hakol yishabechu, chave hakol yomru ein kadosh k'Adonai. Hakol yirom emuchas ela yotzer hakol ha'el ha'poteach b'chol yom datot sharei Mizrach uvokeya chalonei rakia motzi chama mimkoma uvana mimchon shivta umeir laolam kulo uleyoshvav shebara b'midat rachamim hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleh brachamim uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid maseh v'reshit hamelech hamromam levado me'az hamishubach ve'hamefoar ve'hamid naseh mimot olam Elohei olam brachamecha rabim rachem aleinu Adonu zeinu tzor miskabeinu magein ishenu miskabadeinu ein kerkecha ve'ein zulatecha efes piltecha umido melach ein kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh ve'ein zulatecha malkeinu lechayei ha'olam haba Efes biltecha go aleinu limot hamashiach ve'ein domelecha mohoshienu litchiyat hametim. Page 151 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 342 in Sidur Sim Shalom. El Adonai kol hamasim baruch umborach befi kol neshama godlo betuvo malei olam datu tvunaso vevimoto Hamid goel chayot hakodesh v'nedar bechavod al merkavam zechut umishor lifnei chiso chesed rachamim lifnei chodo tovim meyorot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'dat b'vina uvaskel koach ugvura natan bahem liyot moshlim b'kerev tevel meleim ziv umfikim noga noeh zivam bechol ha'olam Smechim b'tzeitzam v'sasim b'voam hosim v'yeim ha'retzon konam וכבוד נונים לשמות עליו ורינה לזכר מלכותו קרא לשמש ויזרח אור והתקין צורת הלבנה שבח נונים לו כל צבא מרום תפארת וגדולה צרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבה מכל המעשים ביום השביעי תפארה פושעינו השבח מעשה ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הצבא תפארה צורנו מלכנו וגואלנו בורא קדוש כמשבח שמו כולם אוהבים כולם ברורים כולם בגיבורים וכולם עושים בהמה ויראה רצון קונם וכולם פותחים אביהם בקדושה בתורה בשירה ובזמרה ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיבור והנורא הקדוש הוא וכולם מקבלים עליהם על מלכות שמיים זה מזה ונותנים רשות זה לזה להקדיש לאותם בנחת רוח בשפה ברבים הקדושה כולם כחדונים ואומרים ביראה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו ואופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת צרפים לעומת המשבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו לאל ברוך נמו יתנו אור חדש על ציון תאיר ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. Page 154 in Sidur Lev Shalem, page 346 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Avar Abav Tanon Eloheinu. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiyut le'artzenu ki el po'el yeshuotata uvanu v'acharta mikol am ve'lashon וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע, סלע באמת, להודות לך וליחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshecha, v'chol meodecha, ve'hayu advarim ha'eleh. אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להודע ידיך והיו תותפות בין עיניך וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובישעריך והיה לדור ודור קיים ושמו קיים וחיסון אחת מלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת ודבריו חיים וקיימים נאמרים נחמדים לעד עולמי עולמים אלוהינו ואלוהינו אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצאנו תור ישועתנו פודנו מצאנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה ומעולם מגנו בשביל לבני עמך We're on page 158 in Sidur Lev Shalem, which is 352 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Tilo Yom Baruch Hu Borach Moshe uMiriam u'Bnei Yisrael Lechanu Shira B'Simcha Rabba V'Amru Chulam Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai Mi Chamocha Nedar B'Kodesh Nora Tehilot Seifele Shira Chadasha Shivchu Gelim Shimcha Safat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu V'Imlichu V'Amru Adonai Imloch Le'olam Va'ed. We rise at the bottom of page 158 or page 352 in Sidur Sim Shalom for Tzur Yisrael. Following Tzur Yisrael, we'll begin the Amidah for Shabbat morning together. You can find the Amidah for Shabbat morning on pages 159 through 166 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or pages 354 to page 365 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma Be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvdechinu Mecha, Yehuda Be'Yisrael, Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch Atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el, Hagadol, Hagibor, Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot, Humevi Goel Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo V'Yahava, Melech Ozer Ufoked U'Moshiach U'Magni, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Meitim Atah Rav Le'Hoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Derofech Oholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, Umido Melech, Melech Mimid, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atah L'chayot, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaMeitim. קדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב על יד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ויאמר. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו, אז בקול רעש גדול, אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מן השאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומך מלכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך. מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשכון. תתגדל ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור לנצח נצחים. ועינינו תראנה מלכותך, כדבר אמור בשירי עוזך על ידי דוד משיח צדקך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, לשבחך אלוהינו מפינו למושתי עולם ועד, כי המלך קדוש וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. you haven't completed your individual whispered Amidah, please continue. We join together for Kaddish Shalem, which can be found in Sidur Lev Shalem on page 167, or in Sidur Sim Shalom on page 392. Yigadal v'yigadah shmei Rabbah, me'almadi v'agadei v'amlich machutei v'chayei chodem v'machon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'gal avizman kariv v'imru amen. Yei shmei Rabbah mevarach, ve'alav l'al me'al maya. Yibarach, v'ishtabach, v'yipar v'yitramam v'naseh, v'yidadar v'yidaleh v'yidaleh shmei d'kudesha, v'richu, le'ila min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechmata, damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Tidgabab, Sotavadon Dechol Yisrael, Kadam of Hondi Vishmaya v'imru amen. Yesh Lamarabah min Shmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh Shalom imromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom aleinu v'al Yisrael v'imru amen. Amen. We turn back to the Psalm for Shabbat, which can be found in Sidur Lev Shalem on page 112 and in Sidur Sim Shalom on page 32. Page 112. Yom Yom Shabbat Kodesh, Shebo Hayulim Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat. O Jinuvun Beseva, Deshenim Rananim Yu, Lagid Ki Ashar Adonai, Tzuri V'lo Avla Tabo. Kaddish Avelim, Mourner's Kaddish, page 121 in Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 52 in Sidur Sim Shalom. Yitgadal, V'yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ve'alma, Divra, Kirutei, Ve'amlich Malchutei, V'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael v'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam melamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha brichu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata tamiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh Shalom imramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Congregation Agudat Achim's in-person and live stream Shabbat morning service. My name is Rabbi Rafi Spitzer. It's a pleasure to join with you to celebrate our congregation and the service of many lay leaders and volunteers on this Carrot Festival Shabbat. Our Carrot Festival every fall is a huge part of our synagogue calendar, and not only does it support many of the programming and the functioning of our synagogue, but it is also a shining example of what can happen when the community works together and comes together to create something that is bigger than all of us. And it's wonderful that we celebrate the volunteers of our Carrot Festival, which is, in essence, our whole community, on another Shabbat in the autumn. We can feel the coming of winter. The days are shortening. This weekend is the fall back. Make sure if you come to our religious school on Sunday morning or to our services at 8:30 on Sunday morning, that you come at the right 8:30 or 9:30. And in spite of that feeling of chill in the air this morning, there is a great warmth here in the sanctuary and through our stream to celebrate our community and to come together in such a beautiful way. A reminder that we continue to begin our Torah service with Hagbah, so that anybody who has been offered an aliyah to the Torah, an honor, can have a visual recognition of the text of the Torah before their honor, since we are not having the honorees come up to the bima. And I did want to mention that we are using today our brand new Sidurim for the first time. I'm very, very excited to be in Sidur Lev Shalem, the newest Sidur of the conservative movement. So it's terrific to be celebrating our community and celebrating this new Sidur with you this weekend. We continue now with the service for taking the Torah out of the Ark, which you can find in Sidur Lev Shalem on page 168, and in Sidur Sim Shalom on page 394. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, ein kemasecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch, leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, Avarachamim, heitiva b'rtzoncha et Zion, tivneh chomot Yerushalayim, ki v'cha levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim. We rise as the ark is open. Vayi binso Aaron, vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, v'yafutzu oirecha, v'yanusu misanecha, mipanecha, ki mitzion teisei Torah, ki mitzion teisei Torah, u'devar Adonai, v'Yerushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Melo Yisrael, Kedushato, Rishmei Dvariyama. Anavdat Kudsha Barichu Desadim. Dei Veyada Rachei, Zvelishmei Kadisha, Kadisha Yakira, Anai Matush Behad, Yehei Rava Kodama, Deziftach Libi Be'oraita, Betashim Nishalim Nedivi, Nediva Lechol Ha'am Yisrael, Letravu Chaim, Velisham, Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai iti unerov Shemo yaktav. Lecha Adonai hagedula ve'hagevura ve'hatiferet ve'hanetzach ve'hahod ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha ve'haminaseh lechol erosh. Romemu, Romemu, Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ishtachavu le'raglav kadoshu romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Remain standing as the Torah is lifted. Mizot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Livnei Bnei Yisrael Al Pi Adonai B'Yad Moshe. May be seated. Our Torah readings for this week, Parashat Toldot, can be found in our Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 157. We begin our reading from chapter 27, verse 28. What we missed in the first 2/3 of this week's Torah portion, since we left off last week, we missed the birth of Esav and of Yaakov, the way that Esav is described as hairy and in some ways outdoorsy, and the way Yaakov is described as an indoor kid. And we hear about the way in which their parents love each of them differently, perhaps in an unhealthy way. We hear about Jacob's swindling of Esav out of the birthright, and we've just finished the story of how Isaac is getting ready to bless Esav, and Rivka and Yaakov conspire to take that blessing from Esav. Where we pick up is what that blessing is. But what we miss the whole lead up where Isaac says, "Oh, you smell like Esav and you feel like Esav, but your voice is the voice of Jacob."
Yeah, that's it.
And so there's a way in which deception is a part of the story, and we have to ask ourselves, what is the utility of deception? Is it ever a good thing? We turn now to page 157. Vayazor v'yagin v'yoshia l'chol ha'chosim bo v'nomar amen hakol havu g'dalinu nekavod la'torah ta'amod Hachi Shoshana Bat Avram Yitzchak HaKohen v'Yendolea Baruch Shnatan Torah l'mo Yisrael b'Gushato Tamad v'Kim Barechem Chaim Kulchem Hayom.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayiten lecha Elohim mital hashamayim umishmanei haaretz v'rov dagan v'tirosh v'yavtucha amim v'yishtachavu lecha leumim hevei gvir leachecha v'yishtachavu lecha b'nei imecha orerecha aror umavarechecha baruch v'yehi ka'asher kila Yitzchak levarech et Yaakov ויהי אח יצא יעקב מאת פני יצחק אביו ועשיו אחיו בא מצדו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Yamod. David ben Rinav Yisrael Alevi can follow along the second aliyah on page 157, verse 31.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayas gam hu matamim, vayave le'aviv, vayomer le'aviv. Yakum aviv yochal mitzeid beno, ba'avur tevarcheni nafshihi. Ba'avur tevarcheni nafshecha. Vayomer lo Yitzchak aviv mihi ata. Vayomer Ani bincha bechorecha Esav Vayecherad Yitzchak charada gedola ad meod Vayomer mi efo hu hatzad tzayid Vayave li va'ochal mikol B'terem tavo Vavarchehu gam baruch yihiyeh.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamdu Shifra Fega bat Mordechai v'Fremet Chaim Ruven ben Shmuel leib behinda Aliyah Shalishit.
Baruch hu Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Kishma Esav et divrei aviv Vayitzak tzaka gedola umara ad meod Vayomer le'aviv Barcheni gam ani avihi Vayomer Va'achicha b'mirma Vayikach birchatecha Vayomer hachi kara shemo Yaakov Vayakveni ze pa'amayim Et bechorati lakach v'hine ata lakach birchati Vayomer halo atzalta li beracha Vayan Yitzchak vayomer le'esav Hein gevir shemati v'lecha Vet kol achiv natati lo La'avadim v'dagan v'tirosh Simachtiv Ulecha efo ma'aseh beni
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamdu Rachel bat Shlomo v'Dina v'Eliezer ben Shmuel v'Chana Aliyah Revit. The fourth Aliyah can be found on page 158, verse 38.
Baruch hu Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu b'kol amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Esav el aviv habracha echad hi lecha avi barchini gamani avi vayisa Esav kolo vayef vayan Yitzchak avi vayomer elav hine משמני הארץ יהיה מושבך ומטל השמיים מעל ועל חרבך תחיה ואת אחיך תעבוד והיה כאשר תריד ופרקת ולא מעל צווארך.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tokenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Talmud Hinda bat Ezra Chaim v'Itka Aliyah Chamishit. The fifth Aliyah can be found on page 159, verse 41.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. וישתום עשיו את יעקב על הברכה אשר ברכו אביו ויאמר עשיו בליבו יקרבו ימי אבל אבי והרגה את יעקב אחי ויוגד לרבקה את דברי עשיו בנה הגדול ותשלח ותקרא ליעקב בנה הקטן ותאמר אליו הנה עשיו אחיך מתנחם לך להרגך ואתה בני שמע בקולי וקום ברח לך אל לבן אחי חרנה וישבת עמו ימים אחדים עד אשר תשוב חמת אחיך עד שוב אף אחיך ממך ושכח את אשר עשית לו ושלחת ולקחתיך משם למה אשכול גם שניכם יום אחד ותאמר רבקה אל יצחק קצתי בחיי מפני בנות חטא אם לוקח יעקב אשר אישה מבנות חטא כאשר מבנות הארץ כאלה מבנות הארץ למה לי חיים.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ya'amdu Chana Sarah bat Pesach v'Susha Nechama ve'Avraham ben Shlomo v'Chana Aliyah Shishit.
Baruch hu et Adonai havarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ויקרא יצחק אל יעקב ויברך אותו ויצווהו ויאמר לו לא תיקח אישה מבנות כנען קום לך פדנה ארם ביתה בתואל אל אבי אמך וקח לך משם אישה מבנות לבן אחי אמך ואל שדי יברך אותך ויפרחה וירבך והיית לקהל עמים וייתן לך את ברכת אברהם, לך ולזרעך איתך, לרשתך את ארץ מגוריך, אשר נתן אלוהים לאברהם.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat amet, b'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amod. Esther bat Eliyahu Tzipora. Aliyah Shavi'it. The seventh Aliyah can be found on page 160, verse 5.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvarach.
Baruch
Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'charabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. וישלח יצחק את יעקב וילך פדין ארם אל לבן בן בתואל הארמי אחי רבקה אם יעקב ועשיו וירא עשיו כי ברך יצחק את יעקב ושילח אותו פדין ארם לקחת לו משם אישה בברכו אותו ויצב עליו לאמור לא תיקח אישה מבנות כנען וישמע יעקב אל אביו ואל אמו וילך פדין ארם וירא עשיו כי רעות בנות כנען בעיני יצחק אביו וילך עשיו אל ישמעאל ויקח את מחלת בת ישמעאל בן אברהם אחות נוויות על נשב לו לאישה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We rise as the ark is open for the healing prayer. Misha be'irach avoteinu mekor abracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha be'irach avoteinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Yivrech v'Petach Olim. Et Les Sar v'et Mari Travaizo v'et Akiva ben Gittel v'et Miriam bat Malka v'et Shalom ben Chaya v'et Bracha bat Myra v'et Linda Pearlstein v'et Michal bat Tova v'et Michael Roberts v'et Eric Hurst v'et Riva Bela bat Avram Chaim Bereza v'et Yaakov Moshe ben bat Yamindol v'et Malka bat Golda v'et Fegalea bat Minsasura v'et Tamar Chaya bat Ruven HaKohen v'et Asher Yosef ben Fega Malka v'et Andrew Parisi v'et Devorah bat Simcha v'Dina v'et Chaim David ben Idol v'et Masha Pesca bat Chana v'et Yaakov ben Laura v'et Yoreh bat Sarah v'et Mindel bat Obachaya v'et Devorah bat Rachel v'et Tzviya Fega bat Malka v'Mudka v'et Moshe Natan ben Chana v'Chaim Yitzchak v'et Chava Siva bat Marmelka v'et Haley Rubenstein v'et Sarah bat Avraham v'et Hinda ben Chaim v'et Yaakov ben Simcha v'Mordechai Faivish v'yet Leah bat Anna v'David v'yet Sima Bela bat Eliezer v'yet Dina bat Chaya v'yet Zelda bat Elka v'yet Chaim Binyamin ben Yochai ben Masha v'et Aroni Akira bat Chana Gittel v'yet Rivka bat Baruch v'Gittel v'yet v'et Kol HaCholim b'Glag Tashazot HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem Lachazikam L'Rapotam Nishlach Lehem Meira Refuat Shema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf B'tok Shar HaCholim וחזק ידידי העוסקים בצורכיהם, שבת יום יזוק והרפואה קרובה לבוא, השבת עליו זמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. מי שבהירחמותינו מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Yitkadav, Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Ve'amad Yivrach Yerutei V'yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon U'v'yomechon U'v'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael B'galam U'v'zman Kariv Yimeru Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam L'almei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitbar V'yitramam V'yinaseh V'yithadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shmei Kodesha Berichu Le'la Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Tamiran Me'alma V'yimeru Amen. Yamod Mordechai ben Chanoch Bebela Likriyata Haftarah. The Maftir Aliyah can be found on page 161, verse 7.
Baruch Adonai Havorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch L'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayishma Yaakov el aviv v'elimo, vayelch b'nei Aram, vayar Esav kirot benot Canaan b'nei Yitzchak aviv, vayelech Esav el Yishmael, vayikach et machalat Yishmael ben Avraham, achot nevayot al nashav lo leisha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Haolam, asher natan lanu Torat hamet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. The Haftarah for Parashat Toldot can be found on page 163. It is drawn from the book of Malachi, the last prophet in the Torah. The book of Malachi represents the Hebrew Scriptures' understanding that prophecy ends at a certain point in history. That is to say, God's direct communication with people in the form of direct verbal revelation. And we nonetheless continue to engage with the text as a vehicle for understanding God's will. The first chapter of Malachi returns to the theme of God's love and sibling rivalry, and talks about the rivalry between Yaakov and Esav, between these two brothers, as an aspect of sort of an ongoing theme in Jewish history. You can follow along as Murray chants the Haftarah, page 163.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bacha b'nviim tovim, ורצה בדבריהם מאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ומשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק.
עשה דבר אדוני על ישראל ביד מלאכי. אהבתי אתכם, אמר אדוני, ואמרתם, במה אהבתנו? הלא עשיו ליעקב, הלא אח עשיו ליעקב, נאום אדוני, ואוהב את יעקב, ואת עשיו שנאתי, ואשים את הרב שממה, ואת נחלתו לתנות מדבר. כי תאמר אדום רוששנו, ונשוב ונבנה חרבות, כה אמר אדוני צבאות, המה יבנו ואני אהרוס, ויקראו להם גבול רשע, בהם אשר זם אדוני עד עולם. בעיניכם תראנה, ואתם תאמרו יגדל אדוני מעל לגבול ישראל. בן יכבד אב ואב את אדוניו, ואמר ואני אהיה כבודי. ואם אדונים אני אהיה מוראי, אמר אדוני צבאות. לכם הכהנים בוזי שמי, ואמרתם במה בזינו את שמך. מגישים על מזבחי לחם מגואל, ואמרתם במה גאלנוך. בעמכם שולחן אדוני נבזהו, ותגישו ניבל לזבוח אין רע, וכי תגישו פסח וחולה אין רע. הקריבהו נא לפחתך, הירצך או הישא פניך, אמר אדוני צבאות. ואתה חלון הפנאל וכוננו, בידכם הייתה זאת, הישא מכם פנים, אמר אדוני צבאות. מי גם בכם ויסגוד לתאים, ולא תאירו מזבחי חינם. אין לי חפץ בכם, אמר אדוני צבאות, ומנחה לא ארצה בידכם. כי מזרחי שמש ויד מבוא, גדול שמי בגויים ובכל מקום. מוכתר מוגש לשמיעו מנחת התורה, כי גדול שמי בגויים, אמר אדוני צבאות. ואתם מחללים אותי באמורכם, שולחן אדוני מגואל הוא, וניבאו בזה אחלום. ואמרתם הנה מטלה והפכתם אותו. אמר אדוני צבאות, בביתכם גזול, ואת הפיסח ואת החולה, והבאתם את המנחה, הארצה אותם מידכם, אמר אדוני. וארו נוכל, ויש בתרו זכר, ונודר, וזובח משחת לאדוני, כי מלך גדול אני, אמר אדוני צבאות, ושמי נורא בגויים, ועתה עליכם המצוות הזאת הכהנים. אם לא תשמעו, ואם לא תשימו הלב, לתת כבוד לשמי, אמר אדוני צבאות, ושלחתי בכם את המרב, והראותי את ברכותיכם, וגם אורתיה, כי אינכם שמים הלב. הנני גואל לכם את הזרע, וזרעתי פרס על פניכם, פרס הגיכם. וינשא אתכם אליו, וידעתם כי שלחתי עליכם את המצווה הזאת, להיות בריתי את לוי, אמר אדוני צבאות. בריתי הייתה איתו, החיים והשלום, ואתנם לו מורא ויראני, ומפני שמי ניחת הוא. תורת אמת הייתה בפיהו, ועוולה לא נמצא בשפתיו, ושלום שמו הלך איתי, ורבים השיבו מעוון. כי שפתי כהן ישמרו דעת, בתורת יבקשו מפיהו, כי מלאך אדוני צבאות הוא. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בחדרות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך, ודברך מדבריך, אכול לא ישוב ריקם. כל מלך נאמן ורחמן אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי בית חיינו, לעלובת נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני, ושמח ציון ביבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו באלוהו הנביא עבדך, ומלכות בית דוד משיחך. במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו, על כיסאו לא ישב זר, ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו. כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו, שלא יכבה נרו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן דוד.
Amen.
על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ויום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen. We continue with the prayer for those who serve the community, page 176. Or that one. Amen. We continue with the prayer for America's military personnel in advance of Veterans Day this coming Thursday. Amen. We're going to do the prayer for the state of Israel, which can be found on page 178. Page 170. Yeah, page 178. Before we do that, I wanted to share with you, yesterday was Rosh Chodesh Kislev, and as is customary on Rosh Chodesh, the liberal Jewish group Women of the Wall in Israel went to do their monthly Rosh Chodesh service at the Western Wall. In preparation for the Rosh Chodesh Kislev prayer, the conservative movement and all of the bodies of the conservative movement around the world sent a letter to the President of Israel, to the Prime Minister, and to the Minister of Religious Affairs in a call to implement the Kotel Agreement, which has been agreed to but not voted on by the Knesset in order to avoid violence and bloodshed. You remember that I spoke to you last month about the violence that occurred on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, just after the high holiday season was over, and there were some physical assaults on the women of the wall. Late last night, the president urged the members of the Knesset who are members of our community, the Masorti Jewish members of Knesset, not to come to the Western Wall as a way of pacifying the ultra-Orthodox members of Knesset. And the sort of deal was, okay, you don't come and there won't be a problem. Our path is known to be a path of compromise and of solutions, so the Knesset members did not go. In spite of this, early yesterday morning, tens of ultra-Orthodox men arrived, and with them thousands of Haredi men who responded to the calls of ultra-Orthodox elected officials and rabbis to come to the Western Wall to interfere with the women's Rosh Chodesh prayer. The conservative movement showed up to support and strengthen the women of the wall and to do everything possible to prevent violence. The events were severe and alarming in the face of the roaring and angry crowds. The Israeli police, which secured the event, they were able to protect severe physical violence, but they were not able to prevent disturbances made by whistles or insults or physical intimidation. When we saw that the situation was escalating, they, instead of going to the Kotel, went to the People's Kotel, the Ezrat Yisrael, the section of the Western Wall that is designated for egalitarian prayer spaces. And we're surprised to find that the area was occupied by dozens of ultra-Orthodox men who had placed a mechitza up in that section in clear violation of Israeli law and refused to vacate. The riots delayed the start of egalitarian bar and bat mitzvah services, which were scheduled to take place there. So it is the hope of the conservative movement all around the world that the Israeli government will fulfill its commitment to sign the Kotel Agreement as soon as possible and to prevent future violence and intimidation. As we pray for the safety and peace of the state of Israel, let us include in our hearts a prayer that the Jewish people not be split by this kind of infighting and terrible preventing each other from worshiping God in the way that we would choose to worship. I know that I feel a lot of anger about this. I hope that you do too. And one way to support is by supporting the causes and the non-governmental agencies in Israel that are supporting our branch of Judaism and the way in which we would like to see Judaism. Let's not give up on Israel, but let's reinvest in the parts of Israeli society that create the kind of image that we would like Israel to be. So I hope that you do consider doing that, and if you would like any advice on how to, please do get in touch with me after Shabbat. The prayer for the state of Israel can be found on page 178, immediately following the prayer for the state of Israel. I'm thrilled to announce that we are returning to our Tat Shabbat services, which will be just after the prayer for the state of Israel in the Michael Handelman room and in the chapel. Amen. prayer for peace, page 178. Not threaten nation, and the human family will not again know war.
For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion. I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream.
Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea.
And let us.
Amen. We continue with Ashrei, page 181. We continue with the service for returning the Torah to the Ark, which can be found on page 183 in our new Sidur Lev Shalem and page 422 in Sidur Sim Shalom.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki nishgav Shema levado.
Hodo v'aretz v'shamayim, v'yarem keren leyamo, Keila lechol hasidav, libnei Yisrael am karov. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
He's more than I'll be. Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al tazovu. Eitz chayim lamachzikim ba v'tom che'ah merushar deracheha darchei olam v'chol netzivoteha shalom Hashireinu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. You may be seated. Shabbat Shalom. Last week I spoke about the importance of thinking about advanced directives. In the course of my study for that Dvar Torah, I came across an interesting question that actually connected more to this week's Torah portion, so I left it out of last week's sermon. The question was, why do we never hear about Rebekah's death? So I was thinking a lot about this, right? So the Torah only mentions that Rebekah has died once, and it's at the very end of the book of Genesis when Jacob is asking to be buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah when he dies, and he says, where my father and mother are buried, right? So he says that Yitzchak and Rivka are both buried there. But we do not have a scene of the death of Rivka. Now, this week's Torah portion includes a scene which isn't actually Isaac's deathbed, but it does begin, the story begins with, and behold, it was that Isaac saw that his time was coming closer to die, and so he wants to bless his children, Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav. Yitzchak wants to bless them, and that's where we get this whole deceit where Jacob wears the sheepskins and Esav's clothes, and he and Rebekah work out this underhanded way of taking Esav's bracha from him while he's out in the field hunting meat for his father. And when he gets back and finds this out, he is really hurt to the core, and he begs, don't you have another blessing for me? Barcheni gam ani avi, please bless me too. So we do have this sense of the importance of blessing as we get to the end of life. Now, when we think about Isaac is a biblical character who is the weakest of the three forefathers, right? Abraham, we get a lot of stories about him. It's clear what his character is. He's a man of faith. He's a man of action. He connects to God. He is the kind of person who God wants to confide in, and he remembers to focus on tzedek, on righteousness, even so much as to beg for the lives of 10 righteous people in Sodom. Right? And we know a lot about Jacob. We get a sense of his slipperiness, of the way that he wants to always end up on top. And we get the sense of him as he wrestles with the angel and comes out permanently wounded from that trauma. We get a sense of his relationship with his brother, and of his relationship with his wives, and of his relationship with his children. He continues the same sins that his parents had and favors his favored wife and his favored wife's kids over the other kids that he has, and he has a lot of children. So we get this sense of Jacob's character. But Isaac things happen to him. Isaac has the Akedah that happens to him. He has this deathbed scene where he supposedly is the actor, but he gets deceived, so something happened to him. Isaac is a character without a lot of his own standing in the story. But his wife, Rebecca, is a huge character, incredibly active. When in last week's Torah portion, Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, comes and asks whether Rebecca wants to go, and she chooses to go. She has an active role. At the beginning of this week's Torah portion, she directly contacts God. She is the one who has the vision, the prophetic vision of which of her sons is going to inherit the birthright, the covenant, the Abraham's promise, the land, the Jewish people. She knows that Jacob is the son that is going to inherit that tradition. In some ways, if we think about links in the chain of tradition, Abraham is the link in his generation, and Jacob is the link in his generation to his children, to us, to the children of Israel. But in between, the link in the chain is Rebekah, not Isaac. So how the more so is it interesting that Rebekah's final words, Rebekah's last requests, Rebekah's blessings are not listed in our story. Rebekah just vanishes. So one possible answer to this question, and I'm going to give two, and then I'm going to leave it sort of open-ended. One possible answer to this question is that the Torah is punishing Rebekah. That is, the biblical authors are purposefully leaving Rebekah out as a punishment for the way that she behaves with respect to Isaac, in terms of this deception in this week's Torah portion and her planning to enable Jacob to deceive Isaac in this way. And therefore, right, then she after this, she's sort of left out of the text. So that's one possible answer. But while I was doing this research about deathbed scenes and advanced directives for last week's Devar Torah, I found that isn't the only voice in tradition. That is, the biblical author, the text, the canon that we have, leaves Rebekah's deathbed scene out. But there were deathbed Rebekah scenes that were written. And in the book of Jubilees, there is a whole chapter devoted to Rebekah's deathbed scene. Now, the book of Jubilees is one of the books that is in the Apocrypha. That is to say, it is a book that is written in the biblical time period, but which didn't make it into our canon, but was preserved by inclusion in the Christian Bible and in other non-canonical works. So there are different names for the different books and whether they were included in the Christian Bible or not. The book of Jubilees is included in some versions of the Christian Bible, and it was written at the time of some of these other biblical books. It is not a later book, like some of the books of the Christian Bible are later. And the book of Jubilees tells the story of the book of Genesis again in its own way. And it actually tells the whole of Jewish history and then gives laws pertaining to it. So it's sort of another version of our story. And there is a whole section that is what Rebekah's wishes are and what her deathbed scene was like. And there's a scene of Jacob, of Yaakov and Esav coming together to bury their mother, just as they come together to bury Yitzchak in our version of the text, and just as Yitzchak and Ishmael come together to bury Abraham. And I guess it's just so fascinating to me and like the possibility, the midrashic possibility, of what it could mean that there are these voices which were written and not included. And it reminded me of what it means for our voices to be written and not included. So my question, my opening for you is, what do you imagine that Rebecca would say at the end of her life? What do you think Rebecca feels with respect to Isaac? What do you think Rebecca feels with respect to Esav and Yaakov? What do you think Rebecca feels with respect to her nieces, who are her daughters-in-law? How do you imagine that voice, which isn't as elevated in our version of the text? Shabbat Shalom. We continue now with the Chatzi Kaddish, which precedes Musaf, page 184 in our Sidur Lev Shalem, our new Sidur. And then we continue with the Musaf Amidah. We'll begin together with Aryeh on page 185, which can also be found on page 430 in Sidur Sim Shalom. And after the Kiddusha, we'll continue with the individual whispered Amidah. We rise for Chatzi Kaddish, page 184.
Yitkara v'yitkara shmei rabba Be'amadi v'rakir teviam lichachute B'chayechan Huv yomechan Huv chayedecho be'Yisrael Bagala Uvizman kari v'yimeru Yehi shmei rabba Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitronam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yithaleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudashah. Leila mikol brachata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran ve'alma, v'yimru. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chazdei Avot, Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, L'man Shemo Ve'ava, Melech Ozer, V'okei Moshiach U'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'okei Tzara. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Metim Atarav Le'oshia. Mashiv Haruach U'Mariv HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayei Metim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofech Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha B'Gevurot, Umidom Elach, Melech Meimit Umechayem, Umatmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'hachayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hametim. Naritcha v'nakdishcha kesotziach sarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kakatuv al yad neviyecha v'karaz el zeh ve'amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai ונשרתה שולים זה לזה, איה מקום כבודו למתם ברוך יאמרו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו הוא יפן ברחמים, בכל עמם יחדים שמו, ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד, פעמיים באהבה שמה אומרים. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנתליינו כל חי, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו, שנתליינו כל חי. להיות לכם אלוהים. ובדברי קודשך כתוב לאמור, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושך נקדיש, ושבחך עלינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
If you haven't completed your individual whispered Amidah, please continue. We join together for Kaddish Shalem, page 203 in our Sidur Lev Shalem, or page 506 in Sidur Sim Shalom.
יתקדל ויקדש שמי רבה.
אמן.
מעלמא דברי כותב ימליך מלכותי וחי אחרונה ונכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובנקרי ואמרו.
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מברך.
לעולם לעלמי עלמיה יתברך.
Yitbarach v'tzavach v'bar b'nam b'nasa v'tadar v'talav v'talav shmei dekudasha.
Brichum.
Leila min kol berchata v'shirta tush berchata v'nechamata demiran be'alma v'imeru.
Amen.
Tit kabal todon uvarton decho Yisrael kadamu on demishmaya v'imeru.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'echol Yisrael v'imeru.
Amen.
Oh, say shalom b'mrama v'huya say shalom aleinu ve'echol Yisrael ve'echol Yisrael tevel v'imeru.
Amen. Yasher Koach to Aryeh for leading us in Musaf, and to everybody who participated in our service, especially to Murray for chanting the Haftarah, to Howie for reading Torah, and to everybody who had an honor or who read prayer, everybody who lifted the Torah or participated. Yasher Koach to everybody for joining in our service. The congregation celebrates this week the birthdays of Harlan Harrison, Ella Margolis, Paula Metzger, Isaac Weingarten, Stephen Cohen, Eli Ferret, Noah Kaufman, Bill Bittner, Willem Bittner, Denise Naparstak, Jacqueline Burmester, Howard Goldstein, Ed Pletman, Kira Gold, Donald Summer, and Steve Schmidt. And we celebrate the anniversaries of Seth and Lori Goldstein. And if there are other special occasions that are going on in your life, please let us know so that we can celebrate with you. And of course, today we are celebrating our Carrot Festival, Shabbat, and our whole community who worked together to create our magnificent Carrot Festival, which Hillary will be talking about in just a few moments. We continue now with Aleinu, page 205. We rise, page 205 or page 510.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tekidu l'alexem reshit, shelo asanu k'yei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpot ha'adama, shelo samkokeinu ka'em, v'goraleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu morim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shehu noteh shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, hu Moshe bikaro b'shamayim imal, u'shchinatu zo, begovei meromim, hu Eloheinu Einot, Emet Malkeinu Efes Zulato, Kakatu B'Torato, Ve'adatayom Ve'ashivota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, B'shamayim imal, ve'al haaretz, mitachat, einot. Kakatu v'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, v'nemar v'haya Adonai le'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yiyeh Adonai echad, hu shemo echad.
Congregation honors the memories of the following individuals who have gone to their eternal rest: Abe Myers, Abram Spiegel, Gladys Kozin, Beatrice Merrims, Jenny Olshine Cohen, Harry Silver, Theodore Takaroff, Lawrence Horowitz, Abraham Flecker, Joel Gauss, Marlene Mendelson, Shirley Newman, Martin Rubenstein, Isidore Schwartz, and Sidney Wolin. In solemn testimony to the unbroken chain of faith which links one generation of the house of Israel to the next, those who mourn and those who are observing Yartzeit now rise to magnify and sanctify God's name with the words of Kaddish Avelim, Mourner's Kaddish, page 207. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divra Kirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon Uvyomechon Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kari V'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam Elamei Almaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpar V'yitromam V'yitnasei V'yithadar V'yit'aleh V'yithalal Shmei Dekudesha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechmata Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Mimramav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oh, it's my pleasure to invite Hillary up to say some words about the Carrot Festival. I think Hillary's going to come up to the Ima up here.
Today is our day to celebrate our Carrot Festival. 43 years of Carrot Festivals, that's pretty impressive in and of itself. Not only is it our day to celebrate, it's our day to thank everyone who was involved in its success, and of course present our very coveted Carrot Award, which will happen a little later on. I would also be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to remember our beloved Rose Westheimer, who we dedicated our festival to this year. That being said, first I have to thank our amazing committee. So close your eyes and imagine that you're living in the midst of a pandemic. Oh wait, we don't have to imagine that, but just work with me here for just a second. So first, picture the opening credits of the Brady Bunch. That's what our meetings look like, since every single one was on Zoom. Now, imagine a group of extremely talented, dedicated people who want nothing less than to plan a fabulous Carrot Festival. Imagine meeting after meeting during a pandemic with rules about everything changing almost every day. Here is how a series of meetings went. At one, we were hopeful that we could go back to normal. Then we heard that we couldn't go back to normal. Maybe we could go back to last year's model. Then things were getting better and we thought maybe we could do a scaled back version. Then things got better and yay, we could go back to normal again. And so it went back and forth until we realized we just needed to be safe for everyone. So the official planning began for a scaled back version. We envisioned having all of the parts of a typical festival, but less of them. We made and sold, well actually sold out, less cakes, made and sold less food, yep, sold out of that too. Capped our vendors at 40, sold out of our vendor spaces. Had less children's activities, but still enough to keep them happy, less organizations in the community service area so everyone could spread out, and still, of course, sold produce from the Carrot Barn because, after all, what's a Carrot Festival without their produce? We felt strongly that we wanted to continue our partnership with CDTA to stuff a bus with donations for local charities. And a bus was parked on our grounds all day, taking donation after donation. We succeeded in our vision, didn't we? Okay, you can open your eyes now if you haven't already. At this time, I would just like the committee to just stand and be recognized and we all really stand out because we have these awesome masks that were made for us by Bonnie Kramer. So committee, just please stand for just a moment and be recognized for all of your hard work. Thank you. And I just want to give an extra special thanks out there to Risa for making sure that we have a fabulous luncheon for today. So in addition to our committee volunteers, thank you to all members and some family members of members who came and volunteered their time to help ensure our success. You were all another piece of the puzzle to make our day such a huge success. So as you know, the Carrot Festival is our biggest fundraiser, and I thank everyone who came out on the day of the festival and were lucky enough to purchase cakes and food, produce, and supported our vendors, who also were very happy. I want to especially thank everyone who supported our Carrot Appeal. Get it? Carrot Appeal. We had 5 corporate supporters: Ellis Medicine, KeyBank, Merrill Lynch, Price Chopper Market 32, and Trustco Bank. Many members supported the appeal at various levels, and I thank all of you. I especially thank Barry and Mark Handelman for being our tent sponsors, and the Rowan family for sponsoring the pony rides in memory of their parents, keeping up their parents' tradition. I'm sure Barbara and Bill were smiling down on all of the children who enjoyed the rides. Please also be sure to take a look at the sign that's outside in the lobby acknowledging all of our donors. Thanks to everyone's support, I'm happy to announce that our very, and I want to emphasize, very preliminary profit amount is right around $15,000. Not too shabby for a scaled-down Carrot Festival. So now, I would like to turn your attention to the kitchen, because this is the time to present our Carrot Award. So I want you to, again, use your imagination, picture grueling hot summer days with only a handful of volunteers spread out in the kitchen, keeping their safe distances. Picture lots of hustle and bustle with them, with hundreds of pounds of carrots shredding, flour and sugar flying, delicious cake filling cooking on the stove. All right, that was just a little exaggerated, but it was kind of fun to imagine that happening. Now picture one person chained, well, sort of chained, to the big mixer in the back of the kitchen, just pumping out cake after cake, making sure we would have enough to meet our goal. Picture someone with a calming presence, but a powerhouse nonetheless. Now open your eyes, and I'd like you to watch as we just have Michael Consolo stand to be recognized to accept this year's award. Just stand up for a moment, Michael. Yep, that's you. So surprise, Colden is not getting an award today. It's you. Okay, you can sit. I'll bring you your award in a minute. So not only did Michael save the day with cake, he almost single-handedly assembled all of the signature cakes. Seriously, we really don't know what we would have done without him. In his own quiet way, he just got it done. He then came back on the day of the festival. Trust me, he gets an extra award for bravery, because we all know that on Carrot Festival Day, the kitchen is enter at your own risk. Michael was on brisket duty, ensuring that every brisket sandwich that left the kitchen was perfect, still with his calm presence. And Michael, I also heard through the grapevine that you said you would do it all over again in a heartbeat. And trust me, we'll remember that next year. So I just want to read to all of you what the award says with our sincere thanks, and I'll drop it off to you on my way back off the bima in a moment. So it says, for the Carrot Festival, it's our logo, the 2021 43rd Annual Carrot Festival, Congregation Agudat Achim, Carrot Award presented to Michael Consolo for volunteering countless hours to help prepare our festival carrot cakes and more. Your help made all the difference. And then it has today's date on it. So that's for you. So thank you to Michael, and again, thank you to all of our volunteers for this year. And I just want to give a little shameless plug for next year. If any of you want to join our committee and also have an opportunity to have these awesome masks, next year's festival is on September 11th. We already have some ideas flying around, but we always welcome new members to our committee. I believe our kickoff meeting will be, it's January 10th or January 11th, so please get in touch with me if you'd like to join us. So again, thank you and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yasher Koach to our whole community for the Carrot Festival, and thank you to Hillary for leading us and spearheading the project every year. I'm going to invite Steve to offer some announcements on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Good morning, good Shabbos. I'd like to thank and welcome everybody here. I'd like those who are joining us in person, those who are joining us by live stream. It's good to have you with us. I want to thank everybody who was involved in the Carrot Festival and getting that planned and put on, and all the food cooked and all the great things that we had that day. The board thanks every one of you for that. I would like to invite everyone who is here in person to join us at the luncheon that is coming up. Sorry, live streamers, we cannot get the carrot cake to you through this send. Another time. We do need to do this lunch in a safe manner. We are really excited to once again be able to gather people here together and do this, but the pandemic is not gone, and so the rules are going to be this. For people to come into the lunchroom, you need to show proof of vaccination. Once you are in the lunchroom, you should pick one table to sit at and take your food to that table and not unmask until you are seated at that table, and then eat your food at the table. If you get up from the table, please remask when you do so. If you are not able to provide proof of vaccination or would prefer not to eat in the room, then we do have food available to go in a grab bag. I think some of the lunch things are there as well as some of the traditional sweets. Maybe not. Okay, hopefully, see what's there. We have some tables set up outdoors for those who would prefer to eat outdoors. I hope it has warmed up. It was supposed to hit 50 this afternoon. There is an outdoor seating option available to people who would prefer to do that. Just some quick announcements while we're going. We have Abdallah at 6:23 tonight. The Scholar in Your Resident Students continues with a class by Rabbi He will be discussing his new book, Dancing God's Earthquake. Copies are for sale through the synagogue office for $18. We have until Thursday the 11th to be prepared for that copy. Get that copy. We'll probably still sell you the book afterwards. Great book. The other thing that's going on in that vein is the Scholar Stream that we subscribe to from the OCJ. The second Scholar Stream. Check the mic. Oh, we got it. Okay. Those of you who are in person, the second Scholar Stream service is on ethics, and it is running out. And the third section you can register for now is on thought of conservative movement. So we encourage you to check those out. The last announcement I can make is that the U.S. Live chapter will be going to the U.S. Live Fall Festival at Agudat Achim. That's on Sunday, November 14th from 2 to 5. Susan Sharp team has more details if you need them. Further details of almost all of that is in the handouts. Shabbat Shalom. Looking forward to seeing many of you at lunch.
Shabbat Shalom. We conclude our service with Adon Olam, which can be found on page 211 of our new Sidur Lev Shalem, and also, if you're in the Sidur Sim Shalom, page 514.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Le'yed Nasa B'chatzo Kol Hazai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'yacharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Hove Vehu Yeh B'tifara Vehu Echad Ve'en Sheni Le'am Shilo Le'ach Bira Beli Reshit Beli Tachlit Velo Haoz Vehamizra Vehu Eli Vechai Goali וזורחב לי ביצרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, בידו אבקיד רוחי, ביתי שן ויעירה, ועם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.